Welcome to our next webinar. My name is Kasia Różańska-Polakowska, and I'm a senior trainer at Worldwide School. Before we start, I'd like to know if you can hear me. Can you put your answers into the chat line at the bottom and say if you can hear me? Hello, hello. I can see some answers, so hopefully, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Thank you. So, right. All right, thank you. So today we're going to focus on some must-have phrases, expressions for business meetings, as you know. Have you ever led a meeting in English? Are you going to? Feeling stressed out? Fear not. By the end of this webinar, you'll be equipped with a nice list of some useful expressions and phrases for holding a meeting in English, for hosting a meeting in English. All right. And since a lot of meetings today are online ones, we'll also learn some expressions that you can use when meeting online. Okay. So, for instance, you're logged in, right? You've checked your audio and video settings. You accept people into the meeting. You look around the screen. You see more or less everyone's there. So you can ask, "Okay, are we good to go?" Yeah. So meaning is everybody ready? Can we start? And so you start. So no matter if it's a social, professional, online, or in-person meeting, the first thing you always do is welcome your participants, right? You can simply say, "Hello, everybody, and welcome," right? Or perhaps in a more formal manner, "First, I'd like to welcome you all," or "I appreciate everyone being here," or you could say, "Good morning. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today, being here on time. I wish to thank you all for coming, agreeing to meet at such short notice." So that would mean, with little warning, yes, or no, not much time right before the meeting, or "Since everyone is here, let's begin. Let's get started, shall we?" Okay. Or perhaps you could say something like, "Let's kick off the meeting with a brief rundown," which is like a short summary of the last meeting. Yeah. Or sort of in keeping with the sort of football type thing, you could say something like, "Let's get the ball rolling," right? If you think of a game of football, one player kicks the ball to another player, and that's the first movement, right? So this is how we start, right? Now, if you'd like to perhaps excuse someone for not being there, right? Someone who was supposed to be there but is not, you could say something like, "Unfortunately, say Mark can't join us today. He sends his apologies," right? Or, "I'd like to apologize on behalf of Peter. He can't be with us today due to a business trip," right? For instance. Uh, Now, if the next thing right, so if you don't know your participants, if you don't know everybody in the meeting, another thing you would probably do is introduce yourself, right? Say what your name is. So how do we do that? "I'm Kasia. I've arranged this meeting because I'd like you to learn some phrases for hosting a meeting in English." Yes. Or, "I'm Barbara. I'll keep this meeting brief, short, as I know you're all busy people." Right. Now, and if you have less than 10 people in the meeting, well, it's good to make sure that everyone is introduced, right? It'll help to break the ice, make people feel at ease, more comfortable. So you can ask others to introduce themselves by saying something like, "Could everyone briefly introduce themselves?" Yeah. Or, "Let's take a moment and introduce ourselves." Or, I see a few unfamiliar faces, like, I don't know these people. So let's do a quick round of introductions, right? Please state your name, your job title, and say why you're here, right? And if you perhaps have a guest in there, or perhaps a new team member has just joined you, you could say something like, "I'd like to introduce," or, "I'd like to begin by introducing someone," or, "It's my pleasure to introduce a person," or, "Please join me in welcoming a new team member," right? "Hello, Mary. It's nice that you've joined our team." Yeah. All right. So having done that, the next thing we would probably do is state the purpose of this meeting, right? Say why we're here, why we're meeting. So how do we do that? We could say something like our aim or our goal today is to, for example, plan the social media strategy for February. Yeah, or we're here today to decide on, to agree on some plan of action, right? Or I've scheduled this meeting so that we can discuss the recent changes in our department, for example, right? Or we could say by the right, or by the end of today's meeting, we need to decide about something, right? And more. The purpose, the aim, the objective of today's meeting is to, for example, complete the budget process. Yeah, or maybe today we're going to agree the marketing strategy. Yeah, or maybe we're here to talk about the important launch of our new product. I've called this meeting in order to talk to you about the launch of the new product, for example, right? Now, if you have an agenda for the meeting, now is the time to go over it, right? So how do we set the agenda? How do we tell people what the meeting will be about? You could say something like, we're here today to address the issue of, that would be to give our attention, to deal with some problem, right? As you can see, some words here will be, my presentation will be marked in green. That's done on purpose to kind of draw your attention to them. And also you'll see the words, or you'll be asked to use these words later on in a short test at the end of our webinar, okay? But that's at the end of our meeting. Now, today I'd like to outline our plans to describe it in some general way, right? Or by the end of the session, everyone will know how to use our new accounting software, for instance. Yeah. Or perhaps you could say, I'll just draw your attention to the agenda. We've got a few things or a lot of things to get through today, to simply deal with today. Or if there's enough time, we'll also run through something. So we'll examine, we'll just deal with, a set of things, especially in a quick way, right? And another slide, there are a number of items on the agenda. So first we'll be discussing this, then we'll try to cover that. Next we'll go over something else. And after that, or finally, we'll move on to the topic of something, right? Now, if you're hosting an online meeting, you might want to show some materials to the participants, right? You might want to share your materials. So, so here are some nice phrases that you can use to do that. You could say something like, I'm going to share my screen, a document with you. I'm going to put up my presentation now, right? So I'm informing the participants what I'm going to do now. Bear with me for a moment, right? That would be like, be patient and wait a little. I seem to have lost my presentation slides. Oh dear, so I need to find my presentation. Where is it? Or I apologize for the wait. Sorry, you had to wait. Please give me a moment so I can share my screen. Yeah. Or perhaps, can you see my screen? Yes, can you see it clearly? Do you want me to make it bigger for you? Perhaps it's not big enough. Or if you've got any comments, you can put them in the chat line, right? So what I asked you to do at the beginning. And obviously, when we're online, there are always some problems, right? Everybody has same problems with sound, with picture, with interruption of connection, with freezing, lagging, all the other problems occur. So here are some expressions that you, perhaps will need to use when something like this happens. Yeah. So we might want to say, I'm having problems hearing you. Can't hear you. Or you're breaking up a little bit. Like maybe you hear every other word. Yeah. Or there's a bit of an echo on the line. Maybe you're not using your headphones or something. Or I didn't quite get that. I just missed the last bit. Say it again. Repeat it, please. Yeah. Or maybe the screen is blank, it's frozen, or you're frozen, right? You're not moving, something's wrong there. Or perhaps the image and sound are out of sync. What would that mean? Do you know? So they're not working well together, right? Like you would expect a person to say something else than they are saying at a given moment. Or you're on mute, right? Switch on your microphone. Or could you speak up, speak louder or speak up more slowly, please? Or perhaps you say, I'm so sorry, you'll have to forgive the noise in the background. Yeah, it's my neighbor drilling. Maybe, he's having his flat renovated or something. Or could you come back to me in a moment? Maybe someone has just asked me a question. I'm saying, could you come back to me in a moment? I have to put myself on mute for a second, right? So I won't be able to say anything. You won't be able to hear me. All right. But let's say we've dealt with all the problems, we've fixed all the problems, and we can continue, right? So, let me show you my next slide. So sometimes we schedule a meeting because we want everyone to be timely updated, right, on recent developments on the company, to hear the company news, perhaps to discuss the current situation in the company. And the following phrases might come in handy then. What are they? You might want to say, I would like to inform everyone about the project's progress, or how is the project coming along, right? We might want to ask someone, so how is it developing? Is there progress? Yeah. Or has everyone submitted their monthly reports? Have you? Right? Or Mark, can you let us know what's new in your department, for example, right? Or regarding last month's report, I'd like to add something. Or I suggest we start with Barbara updating us on her project, right? So having discussed all the updates, we want to move on to another topic. So how do we do that? How can we move on to the next topic? Well, we might want to say something like, well, if nobody has anything else to share, let's move on to our next point on the agenda, right? Or I think that covers it. So now we can go to our next topic, right? And more. The next topic we need to cover is this and that. Or since we've covered this issue, now that we've found a solution, or now that we've finished discussing this topic, we can go to something. Yeah? Nobody enjoys meetings that drag on or run over time, right? So if you're running the meeting, it's your job, right, to practice effective time management, to manage the discussion, right? You need to keep an eye on the time, right? So that's why it's important to make sure that we keep the discussion on track. Sometimes we have some nice discussion, we kind of get sidetracked, and we want people to come back, right, to what to the topic we're supposed to discuss, we're supposed to talk about. So we could say something like, we're getting out of topic, can we continue this discussion later and return or go back to our subject, please? Yeah. Or we might want to say something like, oh, I'm afraid we're running out of time. Yeah. So could we go back to the topic we've been discussing? Yeah. Or, I appreciate your comment. That's a really good point. Let's see what others have to say. So, maybe somebody's been talking for too long. Yes, they've been dominating the discussion, and we want to see others' point of view. What do they think? So let's see what others have to say. Yes, and we kind of invite others to say what they think. And a few more phrases. Getting back to the topic of something, or let's skip this topic, let's leave it and take it up at another time. Yeah. Or perhaps you might want to say, oh, that's a great question, or thanks for asking that question, what a good question. I'll make sure that we save time at the end of our meeting to answer any questions that are outside of the agenda. Yeah, that's probably a nice thing to say. All right, and what else? Oh, I'm afraid we don't have time to talk about that in today's meeting. We'll add that on to the agenda for next week, right? Right. So now when you're in charge of the meeting flow, sometimes it's necessary to hand the microphone over to another person, right? To let another person speak. So so how can we ask another person to speak in a meeting? How do we do that? Oh, sorry. So now perhaps Kate will tell us more about something, right? Or I'd like to hand it over to Monica, who can share more on this topic, right? Hand it over. So I'm going to stop talking and I'll let another person continue, right? Or maybe Agnes is now going to take over, right? She's now going to continue the meeting. Right, and a few more. Now, I'd like to hand you over to Peter again, who will talk you through something. Or now I'd like to introduce Samantha, who's going to talk about some other issue, right? Or would anyone else like to comment on this? Right. So again, we're inviting other people to comment, right? To express their opinions. What do they think about it? All right. Now, another common thing which happens in a meeting is interruptions, right? So, well, surely somebody will want to ask a question or make an observation. Uh, this is pretty, a normal thing, right? So, what might they say when doing so? Sorry, would you mind if I asked a question? Yeah, or say you want to ask a question, someone. Or could I interrupt you for a minute? Would you mind if I jumped in there, please? Or could I butt in, please? Butt in, being pretty informal, right? So could I interrupt you for a minute? Yeah, because I want to say something. Yeah. And more phrases. Can I stop you there quickly? Or can I stop you there for just 1 minute? Yeah. Or I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize for interrupting, but I'd like to add one more thing to what you said before we move on. Okay. Or hold on a minute, please. We don't seem to have discussed some issue. Could we go back over it? Yeah, and discuss it. Yeah. Now, what about if we need to ask for some clarification, right? A great way to do that is simply to ask for more details. Yeah. So we could say, could you clarify your first point, please? I don't understand it completely. So just, make it clear so that everybody can understand it. Yeah. Or I'm not sure what you mean, what you're trying to say here. Could you please elaborate? So simply add more information, right? Explain what you've just said. Maybe in other words, yeah? Uh-huh. Or maybe, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with that term. I just don't know it. Maybe you could explain it in other words. Yeah? Or well, I'm afraid I don't quite follow. I don't understand. Would you mind explaining that again, please? Yeah? And then somebody will try to perhaps rephrase, paraphrase what they've said just to make sure that they've been understood, right? The way they want. So we might ask for clarification, or we might want to give clarification, right? We want to be well understood. So how do we do that? Well, what I'm trying to say is, this and that. Or the point I'm trying to make here is this and that. Or what I mean by saying something is, let me put it in other words, right? Or let me rephrase it. Yes? All right. Uh, all right, so having clarified everything, let's now move to introducing some ideas and suggestions. How can we do that? How can we introduce some new ideas and suggestions? We could say something like, well, I haven't thought this through yet, but how about doing this and that? I haven't thought this through yet, so I haven't considered it carefully. Yeah? Or this might sound crazy, but why don't we try doing something? Yeah. Or here's something that might be worth thinking about. Yeah. Or not sure if this will work in practice, but let's give it a try. Yeah. Or perhaps we could test it for a while and see if it works. Yeah. So the next thing which would follow naturally would be showing our agreement or disagreement, right? But I haven't prepared such a slide for you on purpose because quite not so long ago, I connected another webinar devoted to this particular topic, that is agreeing and disagreeing. The title of it was Let's Agree to Disagree. Perhaps some of you have attended it. So, and if not, you can go back to our archives and watch it again so that you can see all the phrases for agreeing and disagreeing. Yeah. Uh, and if we're attending an online meeting, what else you can do is obviously use your body language. Yes, show the host something like this, or use all the other emojis. Yes, like thumbs up or clapping your hands, a heart to say you love some idea, or obviously a raised hand if you want to ask a question. Yeah. So that's the I'm sure you use them and you know it all too well. Now, but what about if you don't like somebody's idea, right? You would like to challenge it, yeah? Say, and what about like you could say, has it occurred to you? So has it come to your mind that it will probably we will probably lose a lot of customers if we go in this direction, yeah? Or wouldn't it be better to try another solution, perhaps? Or will that create a lot of uncertainty among our staff? Yeah, the people will feel uncertain about this situation. Or maybe you would use the emphatic form, use the auxiliary verb before the verb and say, you do realize that we don't have the budget for that, right? Or you do understand the impact that something like this can have on the business, right? So using the emphatic form will that will have this function of emphasizing what we're trying to say here. Yes, you do understand or you do realize, just to make it sound a bit stronger, right? Now, normally during a meeting, some decisions are made, right? And there's a list of action points for our team. So how do we delegate tasks now, right? How do we tell people what we'd like them to do? We could say something like, Mary, can you keep everyone up to date with the latest developments, please? Yeah? Or Mark, could you please follow up on something? Yes? Or Kathleen, please get in touch with some contractor, for example. Yes? Right. Now, finally, you might like to summarize, right? You might like to summarize the key points of the meeting so that everybody walks away with a clear idea what's being discussed, what happened in this meeting. Yeah. So how can we do that? We could say, oh, here are some of the main points we discussed today, right? And you enumerate the points. Or to sum up, we've talked about this and that, right? I'd like to briefly cover the topics we mentioned today. Or before we finish, let's go over everything we talked about today. And some more phrases. Let me briefly summarize the main points of today's meeting, what we discussed today, or to quickly recap, that would be to repeat the main points, or we've all agreed that we should do this and that, or the proper course of action is to do this and that. And to conclude, we have decided on this and that. Okay, so once we've summarized the main points, we're ready now to end or close the meeting. Yes? How do we do that? That just about covers everything for today, or that covers just about everything from our agenda today. I think we can leave it here for today, or this is a good place to stop to end. Right? And that brings us to the end of this meeting. If there is nothing more to discuss, we can end here. Well, before we wrap up, before we finish, I'd like to, for example, thank everyone for being here today. Yeah, and now if we have a future meeting planned, now is a good time to mention it. Yeah, so you could say we'll have to finish here, but our next meeting will be or is scheduled for next Thursday, example. Yeah, or let's pencil in another meeting for next Monday. Pencil in. That would be like to arrange for something to happen, but kind of remembering that it might be changed later. Yeah. The next meeting's on Tuesday, so I'll see you all then, right? And remember, it's good to end on a high note, in a proper way to show appreciation. So we could say something like, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, sharing your time today, or thank you all for your time and participation in today's meeting. That was a fascinating discussion. Or I want to thank everybody for a productive meeting. We got a lot done today, right? Good job. Well done, everyone. Yeah, or perhaps if you want to, you might want to, sign off with something friendly, so you can say something like "Have a great day" or "Have a great week, everyone." Yeah. All right. So that's about it, but we're not finishing yet. Please bear with me for a moment, okay? Because as I said at the beginning, I've prepared a few exercises for you, just a couple of sentences, so that we can practice, try to see how much you remember. So I've got a few sentences here with some gaps in them, but the first letters of the words that are missing are given to help you. So let's read the sentence and say, what's the missing phrase? What is it? So, number one, before does anybody else have anything to add? Now I need your help. Please use the chat line to put your answers there. So, any ideas? Before we move on, thank you. Before we move on, does anybody else have anything to add? Yeah? Or another one, number two, I know this is a lot of information, so please let me know if you need me to anything, to explain, to say more about it, make it clear. Yeah? Oh, thank you, Hannah, of course. So would you like me to clarify anything? Yeah? And the next one, this is important. So I'd like everyone to, I'd like to hear everyone's opinion, right? Please voice your opinions. What do you think? What's your stance on it? So I'd like everyone to, thank you, Bata. I'd like everyone to comment. Yeah, very simple word. And some more sentences. So if nobody has anything else to add, then I think so simply finish the meeting. What was the phrase? We'll simply finish, or we'll like something you do with the present. You can a present. uh, all right, thank you, Bata. Yes, I think we'll wrap this up, right? So we'll just finish. Yep. Thanks, everybody. A lot of important business today, right? So we covered a lot of topics, right? We discussed a lot of issues today. Can you help me with this one? We got through. Yes, careful with the spelling. Yeah, thank you, Marta. And grammar. Be careful with grammar as well. And we'll the issue shortly. Meaning, we'll talk about it. We'll deal with it. We'll I want everyone to draw everyone's attention to it. We'll simply talk about it. Maybe that's not the easiest one. Not sure if you remember, we had it at the very beginning. I think when talking about setting the agenda. I can't remember. Address. Thank you, Hannah. That's the one. Yes, so we'll address the issue shortly, so in a minute. Yeah. Okay, and another 3 sentences. I'm afraid that wasn't our best decision. We didn't analyze it. We didn't spend enough time thinking about that decision, so we didn't. What was the word? Can't remember. We didn't think it through. Close, Bata. Right. Now I'd like to Elizabeth, who will tell us more about the project, right? So I'm going to stop talking and ask Elizabeth to continue. So I'd like to, if you remember, who remembers? Hand over. Thank you, Bata. Great, Bata is doing a great job here. Okay. And one more. That's interesting. It's never to me. So it's never come to my mind, right? I've never sort of thought about it. It's never, what was maybe perhaps occurred, Anita, thank you. It's never occurred to me. And really, the last 3, hope you're still with me. Sorry but could I just ask a quick question? So that would be an informal thing to say. Sorry to, I'm not sure if you remember, almost, but okay. So I see you're trying, but it's butt in, double T. Yeah, sorry to butt in. Yeah, so say people are talking and you're sorry to butt in. I would just like to say something quickly. Yeah, or Kathleen, how are you with your report? Yeah, is it? Are you making any progress there? Yes. Oh, right. Just careful with the spelling. Again, are you coming along? How are you coming along, right? And last but not least, let's just briefly on what we did. So let's just repeat, kind of summarize, recap. Thank you, Hannah. So I see some of you have been really attentive and remember all the words perfectly well. So thank you. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed our webinar today, and I hope that you feel more confident now about hosting a meeting in English. So good luck to you. Good luck to you. And now, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them in the chat line. Obviously, next week, you'll get a nice PDF document with all the phrases that you can use in meetings. So don't you worry if you didn't manage to make any notes. It's fine. You'll get everything there. Let me also show you a list of my references, all the sources that I've consulted and created this webinar for you. So again, thank you very much, and enjoy the afternoon. Oh, right. There is a question here from Hannah about where can we find the archive with previous webinars. Well, I'm not sure if you receive the daily newsletter from us, do you? Because if you receive our daily newsletter, if you go to the bottom of the page, it's there, right? It says webinars, just click on it and it'll take you to all our previous webinars. Okay, and if you don't receive your daily newsletter, write to us and we'll make it available. So thank you again. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.